And new this morning, the police chief in Madison, Wisconsin, tells CNN he is seeking federal help in identifying the source of a gun used in the nation's latest school shooting. Just days before Christmas break, a teenage student opened fire at a small K-12 Christian school in Madison. A student and a teacher are dead. 6 people were injured, including 2 students who are in critical condition this morning. 2 others are stable. And adding to this horror, it was a second-grade student who had to make the call to 911. Police say the killer was a 15-year-old girl. She was a student at the school named Natalie Ruppnow. She went by the name Samantha. Police say she shot herself and died. Well, today, children and adults at the school have to wrestle with what they witnessed.
We heard them, and then some people started crying, and then we just waited till the police came. And then they escorted us out to the church. I was scared, and why did they do that? Why?
I just heard sobbing, and there was a teacher, and she was screaming like, "Ah, my leg! Help! Help!" I was really scared, and I was really sad.
No child should ever have to go through that. Joining us now is Chris Mohandy. He's a forensic psychologist, and James Allen Fox, a professor of criminology at Northeastern University. He's also an author of Extreme Killing, Understanding Serial and Mass Murder. James, I want to start with you. How surprised were you to learn that this killer was a 15-year-old girl?
Well, it is surprising that it's a girl. There have been other school shootings with females, but it's extremely rare. As far as her age, most school shootings are committed by students. But I also have to point out that there's a lot of misinformation there, misleading information about the risk, about the rate of school shootings. These are exceptionally rare. Mm-hmm. I know that CNN is reporting that's been 83 this year, but if you look through the cases, 4 of them occurred inside schools. The rest outside, on the playground, on the ball field, not involving students. And of the 4 that were inside school, 3 of them were active shooter events, claiming 8 lives for students. Now, that's out of 50 million school students in this country. So our schools are safe. Parents shouldn't feel in the wake of their shooting that their kids are in constant danger. They're not. This is a rare event. Tragic though it is.
You know, look, I take your point, and I think it's important to put that into the broader perspective. The vast majority of kids in this country go to school every day and they're safe. But I also think you don't see this in other countries, and there shouldn't be a tolerance for 83 school shootings, despite the circumstances. 83 school shootings in 1 year. There is no excuse for that, and it should be looked at, and it should be delved into. And you got to look at the warning signs too, because so often it's the family members that are the front lines of this, Chris. And you do have to wonder, this is an unusual case, as we heard, that it's typically boys. In this case, it was a girl. Do you think the warning signs of a troubled 15-year-old girl could be easily overlooked as a potential school shooter?
I think that warning signs are often overlooked when we find that these events happen. About 75% or more of the time, there is leakage beforehand. That is the threats that they're making, the suicidal statements that are not reported in standard see something, say something campaigns. But I do think that there would be a tendency to discount the fact that it might be coming from a female. Females don't do this. And the fact of the matter remains that what's more important are behavioral indicators, the fixations, the grievances, the weapons accessibility. I know they're trying to chase down where that gun came from. Almost all the time it's coming from the home itself that they live in, where the guns are not being safely kept. And it's a huge issue of firearms in our country and the ready accessibility to people that should not have them. So firearms are the leading cause of death of our children, and there needs to be something done about it. But back to the point is that see something, say something campaigns work, and whether it's a female or a male, a 10-year-old or an 18-year-old, those kinds of warning signs need to be reported to people that take them seriously, investigate, and do threat assessment, righteous threat assessment, to determine whether there really is cause for concern.
But Chris, just to follow up with you, I mean, look, there are more guns than people in this country. And it seems like a lot of law enforcement officials at this point are like, look, the guns are just going to be out there. There's nothing we're going to be able to do about the numbers, right? They're out there, they're in this country, they're circulating. You know, the bottom line is the best way to prevent these shootings is to just look for the warning signs and try to make sure that someone who is at risk of doing something like this doesn't have access to those guns. So again, just walk us through what that checklist should look like for people watching the show today. What should the red flags be?
It's usually not subtle. It's usually the person will be making threats, ominous statements. You'll see tomorrow, I'm gonna come shoot up the school, or they'll talk about Columbine. There's a lot of references to other shooters sometimes. They may be talking about their love of guns. They may be talking about how they want to hurt themselves and others. It's usually very straightforward what the kinds of ominous statements that students will make. And it's not just what they'll be saying to other people on campus, other students, but it's also what they're posting on their social media that needs to to be attended to and reported as well. And I want to underscore a point that Dr. Fox talked about earlier, is that there are three types of offenders that pose a potential risk to a campus. One are outsiders that show up and do things. And we may not get as much warning sign about that kind of a person, community-based warning signs we might see. The second are employment-related offenders. Those are people that might be current or former employees, or somebody that's in a relationship with one where DV is spilling onto the campus. And then the third type would be, students and former students. So it's important to recognize that if you've got a threat management program, it needs to include looking at all those three potential threat sources and devising, as a school, as a community, as a law enforcement, methods to intervene and interrupt those unfolding violence pathways.
Right, because I think it's important to emphasize, in most cases, they don't just snap. Go ahead, Dr. Fox.
And in fact, we have far more averted school shootings than we have school shootings. And indeed, these warning signs should be heeded. But and I do support every effort to try to improve gun safety and counseling of students. But just to be clear about the statistic, that the overwhelming majority of those numbers are at school, on school property. They're at nighttime, involving adults. They don't have anything to do with the school. That's all I'm trying to say. That schools are safe. These episodes do happen. We should be aware of the warning signs, but let's also not scare Americans and parents and students by talking about these large numbers of cases that really have no relevance to the school. So when people hear 83 school shootings, they want more school resource officers. They want more armed guards. They want more lockdown drills. The overwhelming majority, over 90% of those cases, have no relevance to what goes on inside the school. Schools are safe. At school, kids have supervision, they have monitoring, they have structure. In fact, for some kids, school is the safest place for them to be. So we take these cases seriously, but let's also not think that this situation is out of control. It's not. We actually had more school shootings.
And there is the risk of availability bias. There is always the risk of availability bias, and it's important to talk about the statistics in the larger context. But, look, when you look at the numbers, and I take your point, I just want to be specific with our viewers. This is what CNN's numbers. Of the 83 school shootings this year, 56 shootings have been reported on K through 12 campuses and 27 on university and college campuses. And I know your point, you're saying some of the schools weren't actually the target, but you did talk about that there were some that have been averted, right? That some school shootings they've been able to stop them before they happened. You're on the record also for being skeptical of the value of school drills for shootings, right? After the school shooting in Georgia back in September, you wrote this in the Dallas Morning News: do students really need to practice over and over again how to sit quietly in a corner of their classroom? You continued, in the process of trying to protect them through tight security and lockdown drills, we send the message that the bad guy is out to get them, that there is a target on their backs. James, I will say a school official in this case credits those drills and how her students responded yesterday. Do you still feel the potential trauma of those drills on young students is too much?
I do, and the evidence shows that kids are traumatized by them. I'm not saying we shouldn't have them, but some schools have extremely aggressive drills involving fake guns and fake blood and someone running around and screaming and shouting at the students. We should low-key it. The faculty should be trained along with the police. The students, for the most part, should listen up if something bad happens. We should take a lesson from the airlines. No one pays attention when they're given the instructions at the beginning of the flight, but we don't have drills on flights. We just know that the crew has been trained and will listen up. So let's have low-key trainings. Kids can be told what to do. They can be tested on what to do. But having kids repeatedly sit in the corner quietly, it doesn't take a lot to learn that.
All right, James Allen Fox,
I
Chris
agree with Dr.
Mohanty.
Fox. I think you have to avoid anything that's going to traumatize them. What we call those cue-based drills, where they just learn to follow cues, because you can't do the same thing every time anyway, because offenders will study that and use that as the basis for their attack. So you have to be thoughtful, as Dr. Fox is saying.
All right. Look, as a mom of young kids, I agree with that. You don't want to scare them and cause trauma. Quickly, go ahead. We're running out of time. Go ahead.
Sure. We've tended to normalize this event by constantly obsessing over it and having kids go through these drills. We're telling kids, reminding kids, you don't like your teachers, you don't like your classmates. What do? Take a gun to school. We need to deal with it in terms of prevention. But let's not overstate the risk, because it actually can backfire.
All right, James Allen Fox, Chris Mohanty, thank you.